In March 1976, an armored car delivery to the prestigious Peachtree Plaza Hotel in downtown Atlanta became the target of one of the most meticulously planned heists in Georgia's criminal history. Within 12 minutes, 3 men walked away with $3.4 million in cash and bearer bonds, leaving behind no witnesses, no fingerprints, and no trace of where the money had gone. The case baffled investigators for decades, filed away among the unsolved crimes that haunt every major police department. But in 2019, a routine fire sprinkler malfunction in the hotel's basement would accidentally expose what had been hidden in plain sight for over 4 decades. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The Peachtree Plaza Hotel stood as Atlanta's crown jewel in 1976, a 73-story cylindrical tower that dominated the city's skyline. Built just 2 years earlier, it housed luxury suites, high-end restaurants, and served as the temporary home for visiting dignitaries and wealthy business executives. The hotel's prestige made it a natural choice for secure financial transactions, particularly for institutions that needed to move large sums of cash and negotiable securities without drawing public attention. On the morning of March 18, 1976, the hotel was scheduled to receive a routine delivery from Southern Security Transport, an armored car service that specialized in high-value transfers between banks and private institutions. The cargo that day was unusually substantial, a collection of cash deposits and bearer bonds totaling $3.4 million, destined for a private banking conference being held in the hotel's executive suites. The delivery had been planned weeks in advance, with security protocols reviewed and approved by both the hotel management and the transport company. At exactly 9:20 a.m., the armored vehicle pulled into the hotel's service entrance on International Boulevard. The location was chosen deliberately, away from the main lobby and public areas, providing privacy for the sensitive transfer. 2 armed guards, Michael Torres and David Brennan, exited the vehicle carrying 3 reinforced cases. Both men were experienced professionals with spotless records and years of similar deliveries under their belts. The hotel's receiving area was supervised by Assistant Manager Patricia Williams, who had worked at the Peachtree Plaza since its opening. She held the master keys to the secure storage room where the cases would be temporarily held before being transported to the conference room later that afternoon. The procedure was straightforward: sign the transfer documents, secure the cases in the storage room, and provide the guards with confirmation receipts. What happened next defied every security protocol in place. As the guards approached the service elevator with their cargo, 3 men emerged from what appeared to be a maintenance corridor. They wore matching gray uniforms with the hotel's logo stitched on the chest pockets, and each carried official-looking clipboards. Their appearance was so convincing that neither the guards nor Williams questioned their presence. The first man, tall with graying hair, approached Torres with a clipboard and asked him to verify the delivery numbers against their internal manifest. As Torres leaned in to examine the paperwork, the second man stepped behind Brennan and pressed what appeared to be a pistol against his lower back. The third man moved to Williams and calmly informed her that this was a robbery, but that no one would be harmed if they followed instructions exactly. The coordination was flawless. Within seconds, both guards had been disarmed and their hands secured with plastic zip ties. Williams was given a set of keys and instructed to unlock the storage room. The entire operation unfolded in complete silence, with no shouting, no panic, and no resistance from the victims. The 3 men moved with the precision of individuals who had rehearsed every step multiple times. The cases were transferred from the guards to the 3 men in under 3 minutes. But rather than fleeing immediately, the robbers took an unexpected step that would later confound investigators. They moved deeper into the hotel's service areas. disappearing through a series of maintenance corridors that most hotel staff didn't even know existed. Torres, Brennan, and Williams were left secured but unharmed in the storage room, with instructions not to call for help for at least 10 minutes. When hotel security finally responded to the delayed alarm, they found the service area empty except for the 3 victims. The robbers had vanished without a trace, taking with them not only the $3.4 million in cash and bonds, but also any clear indication of how they had escaped. The hotel security cameras in the service area had been mysteriously offline for maintenance that morning, a coincidence that investigators would later find deeply suspicious. The initial police response was swift and comprehensive. Within an hour, the Atlanta Police Department had cordoned off the entire service level of the hotel and begun interviewing every employee who had been on duty that morning. The FBI was called in due to the interstate nature of the armored car company and the substantial federal implications of stolen bearer bonds. By afternoon, over 30 agents and detectives were working the case. The investigation revealed disturbing gaps in the hotel's security. The maintenance uniforms worn by the robbers were authentic, complete with proper logos and identification badges. Someone had either stolen them from the hotel's laundry service or had access to the supplier who manufactured them. The clipboards carried genuine hotel letterhead, and the paperwork appeared to be legitimate work orders, though closer examination revealed they were expertly forged. More troubling was the robbers' intimate knowledge of the hotel's layout. The maintenance corridors they had used to approach and escape were not marked on any public floor plans. Access required specific key cards that were issued only to senior maintenance staff and management. The timing of their appearance, just as the armored car arrived, suggested they had detailed inside information about the delivery schedule. Detective Raymond Cole, the lead investigator assigned to the case, would later describe it as one of the most professionally executed robberies he had encountered in 23 years with the department. The absence of violence, the precise timing, and the sophisticated escape route all pointed to extensive planning and possibly inside assistance. But despite hundreds of interviews and months of investigation, no solid leads emerged. The hotel staff members with access to the necessary areas all had solid alibis and passed polygraph tests. The maintenance uniform supplier reported no missing inventory, and their employee records showed no connections to known criminals. The forged paperwork was analyzed by federal document experts, but the quality was so high that it provided no useful forensic evidence about its origin. One detail that particularly puzzled investigators was the robbers' decision to move deeper into the hotel rather than fleeing immediately to the street. Security footage from the lobby and main entrances showed no suspicious individuals leaving the building in the hours following the robbery. This suggested either that the perpetrators had remained inside the hotel for an extended period, or that they had used an exit route that had not been monitored or discovered. The financial institutions affected by the theft immediately implemented enhanced security measures, and insurance companies began their own parallel investigation. The bearer bonds, which could be converted to cash by anyone who possessed them, were flagged in financial databases worldwide. Banks and securities dealers were alerted to watch for any attempts to redeem the stolen instruments. Despite these efforts, none of the bonds ever surfaced in legitimate financial channels. As weeks turned to months, the case began to grow cold. The FBI maintained an active file, but resources were gradually shifted to newer investigations. The hotel upgraded its security systems, implemented new protocols for deliveries, and tried to move past the incident that had tarnished its reputation. The $3.4 million theft became another entry in the Bureau's unsolved cases, a reminder of how even the most secure environments could be compromised by careful planning and inside knowledge. For the victims, the robbery left lasting impacts beyond the financial loss. Torres and Brennan both requested transfers to different routes, unable to shake the feeling that they had been specifically targeted. Williams continued working at the hotel, but never again handled secure deliveries alone. The professional manner in which the robbery had been conducted only added to their unease, suggesting they had encountered individuals who might strike again. The years that followed brought occasional leads that ultimately led nowhere. In 1978, a construction worker renovating a building in downtown Atlanta discovered a cache of hotel uniforms buried in a wall cavity, but forensic analysis showed they predated the robbery by several years. A tip in 1981 led investigators to a storage unit in Marietta, where they found detailed floor plans of the Peachtree Plaza. But the renter had paid in cash using a false name, and the trail went cold before any arrests could be made. Detective Cole, who had become obsessed with solving the case, spent his off-duty hours walking through the hotel's service areas, trying to understand how three men could simply vanish with such a substantial amount of money. He mapped every corridor, every exit, every maintenance access point. His notes filled multiple filing cabinets, but the breakthrough he desperately sought remained elusive. In 1983, Cole received what seemed like the break he had been waiting for. A federal prisoner in Alabama, facing a lengthy sentence for armed robbery, claimed he had information about the Peachtree Plaza heist. The man, Vincent Caldwell, said he had been approached in 1975 by an associate who was planning a major score in Atlanta. According to Caldwell, the associate had mentioned having someone on the inside at a prominent hotel. Cole traveled to Alabama to interview Caldwell personally. The prisoner provided details that had never been released to the public, including the fact that the robbers had worn authentic hotel uniforms and used genuine paperwork. But when pressed for names or more specific information, Caldwell's story began to fall apart. He claimed his associate had died in a car accident in 1979, conveniently eliminating any possibility of verification. The interview ended with Cole more frustrated than hopeful. By 1985, the case file had grown to encompass thousands of pages of interviews, forensic reports, and investigative dead ends. The insurance companies had long since paid out their claims, and the hotel had moved on from the incident. Cole retired in 1987, passing the case to Detective Sarah Martinez, who inherited not just the files but Cole's obsession with finding answers. Martinez brought fresh eyes to the investigation, focusing on aspects that Cole might have overlooked. She was particularly interested in the timing of the security camera malfunction, which had occurred just hours before the robbery. Her review of maintenance records revealed that the cameras had been serviced by an independent contractor, not the hotel's regular technician. The work order had been submitted through proper channels, but the signature authorizing the service was difficult to verify due to poor record keeping. The contractor who had performed the work, a small electronics repair company called Metro Security Solutions, had gone out of business in 1978. Martinez tracked down the company's former owner, Robert Hayes, who was living in retirement in Savannah. Hayes remembered the service call clearly because it had been unusual. He had received an urgent request to disable the cameras for what was described as a sensitive corporate meeting requiring absolute privacy. Hayes had been paid in cash, double his usual rate, by a hotel employee he didn't recognize. The man had claimed to be from the corporate security department and had shown identification that appeared legitimate. Looking back, Hayes admitted he should have verified the request through normal channels, but the urgency and generous payment had convinced him to proceed without his usual protocols. This revelation gave Martinez her first concrete lead in years. She began investigating who might have had the authority to authorize such a request and access to corporate security credentials. The hotel's employment records from 1976 showed 3 individuals in positions that could have provided such access, but 2 had died in the intervening years, and the third had moved overseas and could not be located. Martinez also discovered something that Cole had missed in his original investigation. The hotel's architectural plans, filed with the city planning department, showed a series of utility tunnels that connected the Peachtree Plaza to adjacent buildings. These tunnels, originally designed for shared heating and electrical systems, had been largely forgotten after construction was completed. They provided a potential escape route that had never been thoroughly examined. Armed with this new information, Martinez requested permission to conduct a comprehensive search of the tunnel system. The hotel management, now under different ownership, was reluctant to disrupt operations, but eventually agreed to provide access during off-peak hours. What Martinez found in those tunnels would shift the entire direction of the investigation. The tunnels were exactly as the architectural plans indicated: narrow concrete passages that ran beneath the city streets. Most were filled with pipes and electrical conduits, but one section had been modified in a way that didn't match the original blueprints. A section of a concrete wall had been carefully removed and then replaced, creating a hidden chamber approximately 6 feet square. Inside this chamber, Martinez found evidence that someone had spent considerable time there. Empty water bottles, food wrappers, and cigarette butts suggested the space had been used as a temporary hideout. More significantly, she discovered fragments of the same gray fabric used in the hotel uniforms, along with pieces of plastic that appeared to have come from zip ties similar to those used to restrain the guards. The discovery proved that the robbers had indeed used the tunnel system to escape, but it raised new questions about how they had known about these forgotten passages and gained access to them. The chamber showed signs of preparation that would have taken weeks or months to complete. Someone had invested significant time and effort in creating the perfect hiding spot, just steps away from where the robbery had occurred. Martinez submitted the evidence for forensic analysis, hoping that advances in technology since 1976 might reveal fingerprints or DNA that had been missed in the original investigation. The results were disappointing, but not entirely unexpected. The passage of time and the humid conditions in the tunnels had destroyed most potential biological evidence. However, the fabric fragments confirmed that they had come from authentic hotel uniforms, supporting the theory that the robbery had involved inside assistants. The investigation took another turn when Martinez discovered that the tunnel system connected not just to adjacent buildings but to the city's storm drain network. During heavy rains, these drains provided a hidden highway that could transport someone across the city without being seen. She began mapping the drain system, looking for potential exit points that the robbers might have used. This painstaking work led her to a storm drain outlet near the Chattahoochee River, approximately 2 miles from the hotel. The outlet was hidden by overgrown vegetation and rarely visited by city maintenance crews. Martinez found evidence of recent use, including tire tracks in the dried mud that suggested a vehicle had been parked there repeatedly. Though she couldn't prove these tracks were connected to the 1976 robbery, their location at the end of a tunnel system that led directly to the hotel was too coincidental to ignore. Martinez's discovery of the storm drain outlet marked a crucial breakthrough, but it also highlighted how much time had been lost. The tire tracks, though potentially significant, were decades old and had been exposed to countless weather cycles. Any forensic value they might have possessed had long since deteriorated. Still, the detective pressed forward, convinced that the tunnel system held more secrets. Her next step was to examine city records from 1976, searching for any permits or work orders that might explain how the robbers had gained access to the tunnels. What she found was a maze of bureaucratic paperwork that revealed the casual attitude toward security that had characterized Atlanta's rapid development in the 1970s. Multiple construction crews had been granted access to the tunnel system for various projects, often with minimal documentation or oversight. One permit stood out among the dozens Martinez reviewed. In January 1976, just 2 months before the robbery, a company called Underground Utilities, Inc. had been authorized to inspect and repair sections of the tunnel network near the Peachtree Plaza. The work order was signed by a city official whose signature appeared on hundreds of similar documents, suggesting routine approval without detailed scrutiny. Martinez attempted to trace Underground Utilities, Inc. through state business records, but the company had been dissolved in 1977 with minimal paperwork filed. The registered address led to a vacant lot that had been cleared for development decades earlier. The listed owner, Thomas Richardson, appeared in no other official documents and seemed to exist only in connection with this single, suspicious business entity. This pattern of carefully constructed false identities and shell companies suggested a level of sophistication that went far beyond a simple armed robbery. Someone had spent months, possibly years, preparing for the heist. They had created legitimate-seeming business entities, obtained proper permits, and gained legal access to the areas they needed to execute their plan. The robbery itself had been just the final act in an elaborate performance. Detective Martinez shared her findings with federal investigators, who had maintained a passive interest in the case despite its age. The FBI's white-collar crime division was particularly intrigued by the use of shell companies and false documentation. They agreed to assist with a more comprehensive background investigation, using databases and analytical tools that hadn't existed in 1976. The federal investigation revealed a disturbing pattern of similar companies that had been created and dissolved in the Southeast during the mid-1970s. Many had obtained permits for utility work, construction projects, or maintenance contracts at high-security facilities. None had left significant paper trails, and all had disappeared shortly after completing their stated business purposes. The pattern suggested a criminal organization with the resources and expertise to manipulate official systems on a regional scale. Meanwhile, the hotel industry had evolved dramatically since 1976. The Peachtree Plaza had changed ownership multiple times and undergone extensive renovations. The service areas where the robbery had occurred bore little resemblance to their original configuration. New security systems had been installed, old tunnels had been sealed, and many of the personnel who might have provided useful information had long since retired or died. Martinez realized that her investigation was racing against time in more ways than one. Physical evidence was deteriorating. Witnesses were aging or passing away, and the institutional memory of the events was fading. She made the decision to go public with selected details of her discoveries, hoping that media attention might generate new leads from unexpected sources. The press conference she held in late 1989 attracted significant attention from both local and national media. The story of a 13-year-old unsolved robbery, complete with underground tunnels and mysterious shell companies, captured public imagination. Martinez was careful to withhold certain details that only the perpetrators would know, hoping to filter genuine tips from the inevitable flood of false leads and conspiracy theories. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The Atlanta Police Department received hundreds of phone calls in the first week following the press conference. Most were from well-meaning citizens who thought they had seen something suspicious years earlier, but a few provided information that warranted serious investigation. One caller claimed his deceased father had worked for a company that did utility inspections in the 1970s and had mentioned being hired for unusual jobs that paid extremely well in cash. Another tip came from a former hotel employee who had been working in the laundry department during the time of the robbery. She remembered a coworker who had quit suddenly just days after the heist, claiming he had found a better job out of state. The coworker, named James Mitchell, had access to uniforms and had occasionally worked overtime shifts that would have given him detailed knowledge of hotel operations and delivery schedules. Martinez tracked Mitchell to a small town in Tennessee, where he had been living under his real name for over a decade. Now, in his 60s and suffering from poor health, Mitchell initially denied any knowledge of the robbery. But when confronted with evidence of his sudden departure from Atlanta and his access to the materials used in the heist, his story began to change. Mitchell admitted that he had been approached by someone who claimed to represent a private security company that was testing the hotel's defenses. He had been offered $5,000 to provide information about delivery schedules and uniform procurement. The amount was substantial enough to clear his gambling debts, and the explanation seemed plausible given the hotel's prestige and the value of the assets it handled. According to Mitchell, he had met with his contact only twice, both times in parking lots away from the hotel. The man had never given his real name, paying in cash and asking specific questions about guard procedures, camera locations, and the layout of service areas. Mitchell claimed he had assumed the information would be used for a legitimate security assessment and had been shocked to learn about the robbery. Mitchell's account provided the first direct link between the robbers and someone with inside access to the hotel. But when pressed for more details about his contact, Mitchell's memory proved frustratingly vague. He described a middle-aged white man with no distinguishing features, someone who could have been any of thousands of Atlanta residents. The meetings had occurred in different locations each time, and Mitchell had never seen the man arrive or leave, suggesting careful operational security. The investigation into Mitchell's background revealed a pattern of financial problems and poor decision-making that made him an ideal target for recruitment. His gambling debts had put him in contact with bookmakers who operated on the margins of legality, providing potential connections to more serious criminal enterprises. Martinez began investigating these connections, hoping to trace the chain that had led from street-level gambling to a multi-million-dollar heist. This line of inquiry led her to examine organized crime activity in Atlanta during the 1970s. The city had been experiencing rapid growth and development, creating opportunities for both legitimate business and criminal enterprises. Several crime families had established operations in Atlanta, attracted by the city's emergence as a major transportation and financial hub. The sophistication and planning evident in the Peachtree Plaza robbery suggested possible involvement by organized crime figures with the resources to mount such an operation. Federal investigators provided Martinez with intelligence files on known organized crime figures who had been active in Atlanta during the relevant period. One name that appeared repeatedly was Vincent Torino, a mid-level associate of a New York crime family who had moved to Atlanta in 1974. Torino had been suspected of involvement in several high-value thefts, but had never been successfully prosecuted due to lack of evidence and his careful operational methods. Torino's background included experience with complex financial crimes and a network of associates who specialized in document forgery and identity theft. He had the resources and connections necessary to create the shell companies and false identities that had been used to gain access to the tunnel system. Most significantly, he had disappeared from Atlanta in late 1976, just months after the robbery, and had not been seen in the Southeast since that time. The FBI's Organized Crime Task Force agreed to make Torino a priority target, using resources that hadn't been available to Martinez working alone. They discovered that Torino had maintained a low profile since leaving Atlanta, living under assumed names in several different states. By 1990, he was believed to be residing in Las Vegas, where he had established new criminal enterprises focused on casino fraud and money laundering. Federal agents in Las Vegas began surveillance of Torino's known associates and business interests. They discovered that he had maintained contact with several individuals who had connections to Atlanta, including a former hotel employee who had moved to Nevada shortly after the Peachtree Plaza robbery. This employee, Maria Santos, had worked in the hotel's administrative offices and would have had access to delivery schedules and security protocols. Santos was approached by federal agents and agreed to cooperate in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Her account revealed the final pieces of the puzzle that had eluded investigators for nearly 15 years. She confirmed that Torino had recruited her to provide inside information about hotel operations, paying her monthly retainers that far exceeded her legitimate salary. According to Santos, Torino had spent over a year planning the robbery, studying the hotel's operations and identifying vulnerabilities in its security systems. He had recruited Mitchell to provide information about uniforms and service procedures, while using his own resources to create the shell company that gained access to the tunnel system. The robbery itself had been executed by 3 associates brought in from out of state specifically for the operation. Santos provided details about the escape route that confirmed Martinez's theories about the tunnel system. The robbers had indeed used the hidden chamber that Martinez had discovered, remaining underground for several hours after the heist, while police focused their search on street-level escape routes. They had eventually made their way to the storm drain outlet, where vehicles had been positioned to transport them out of the city. The money and bearer bonds had been moved to a secure location outside Georgia, where they had been held until the initial investigation cooled down. Santos claimed that Torino had waited nearly 2 years before beginning to convert the stolen assets into untraceable cash, using a network of criminal contacts across multiple states to launder the proceeds gradually. This information provided federal prosecutors with enough evidence to seek indictments against Torino and his known associates. However, the passage of time had created significant challenges for any potential prosecution. Several key figures had died, others had disappeared, and much of the evidence was circumstantial despite its compelling nature. In 1991, federal agents arrested Torino at his Las Vegas residence. They found him living under an assumed name, with identification documents that matched the sophisticated forgeries that had been used in the Atlanta operation. His arrest made national news, finally providing closure to one of the Southeast's most notorious unsolved crimes. But Torino's arrest was just the beginning of a new phase in the investigation. During the search of his residence, agents discovered documents that suggested the Peachtree Plaza robbery had been just one operation in a much larger criminal enterprise. References to similar heists in other cities, along with detailed operational plans and financial records, indicated that Torino's organization had been responsible for millions of dollars in thefts across the country. The documents also revealed something that would prove crucial to the final resolution of the case. Hidden among Torino's papers was a hand-drawn map of the Peachtree Plaza's basement level, showing not just the tunnel system that Martinez had discovered, but additional hidden spaces that had never been found. One of these spaces was marked with symbols that appeared to indicate the location of stored materials. Federal agents immediately contacted Atlanta authorities to request another search of the hotel's basement areas. Using Torino's map as a guide, they focused on sections of the building that had been overlooked in previous investigations. The search required careful coordination with hotel management, as many of the areas were now part of active mechanical systems that couldn't be disrupted during normal operations. The breakthrough came when investigators noticed that one section of the basement ceiling appeared newer than the surrounding structure. Closer examination revealed that a portion of the original ceiling had been removed and replaced, creating a hidden space above the mechanical rooms. Access required removing sections of ductwork and navigating through cramped utility spaces, but the effort revealed a compartment that had been sealed since the 1970s. Inside this hidden space, investigators found materials that had been left behind by the robbers. Canvas bags that matched the description of those used to carry the stolen money, along with clothing and equipment that bore traces of the same fibers found in the tunnel chamber Martinez had discovered years earlier. More significantly, they found detailed notes in Torino's handwriting that outlined the entire operation from initial planning through execution. These notes provided the clearest picture yet of how the robbery had been planned and carried out. They confirmed that Torino had spent months studying the hotel's operations, recruiting inside sources, and preparing the escape route through the tunnel system. The notes also revealed that the operation had been intended as a template for similar robberies in other cities, part of Torino's plan to establish a criminal enterprise specializing in high-value institutional thefts. But the most significant discovery was yet to come. Hidden deeper in the compartment, wrapped in waterproof material, investigators found a collection of bearer bonds that had never been reported among the stolen items. These bonds, worth over $800,000, appeared to have been overlooked in the original inventory of stolen assets, or had been deliberately concealed to avoid insurance claims. The discovery of these bonds raised new questions about the scope of the original theft and the accuracy of the initial investigation. It suggested that the total value of the stolen assets might have been significantly higher than the reported $3.4 million, and that some parties involved in the delivery might not have been entirely forthcoming about what had been taken. Federal investigators began re-examining the original insurance claims and financial records related to the robbery. They discovered discrepancies in the reported values of some items and evidence that certain assets had been deliberately underreported to minimize insurance premiums. The complexity of these financial arrangements suggested that the robbery might have been an inside job involving parties beyond just hotel employees. This revelation opened new avenues of investigation that would extend the case well into the 1990s. The discovery of the hidden bonds and Torino's detailed notes had solved the mystery of how the robbery was carried out, but it had also revealed that the full scope of the crime was larger and more complex than anyone had previously understood.